You were never confused. Not really. You were trained. There is a difference. Confusion feels chaotic. Programming feels normal. That is why you did not question it sooner. From the beginning, you were told who you were, before you ever chose. Be good. Be quiet. Be realistic. Be normal. No one said. Be aware. Be critical. Be independent. Because awareness is disruptive. And systems do not reward disruption. They reward compliance. So you adapted? Not because you were weak. Because you were intelligent. Children survive by adapting. You learned which emotions were acceptable. Which questions were dangerous. Which dreams were unrealistic. And slowly, you stopped asking. You started filtering yourself before anyone else had to. That is how programming works. It does not control you directly. It teaches you to control yourself. You call it personality. But how much of it was chosen? And how much of it was installed? The fear of failure. The fear of judgment. The fear of being different. Those are not instincts. They are inheritances. And inheritances feel natural because you never remember receiving them. At some point, you stopped exploring and started performing. You became the version of yourself that felt safest, not the version that felt truest. Safe is rewarded. True is often isolated. So you chose safety without realizing it was a choice. And the cost of safety is quiet dissatisfaction. That subtle feeling that something is off, that something is missing, that something is not yours. That missing feeling is not weakness. It is misalignment. The version of you that was shaped and the version of you that was possible do not fully overlap. Programming does not erase you. It layers over you, like paint over original wood. The structure is still there, but it is hidden. You can feel it sometimes, in moments of silence, in late-night thoughts, in the sudden urge to change everything. But by morning, the system resumes. Responsibilities return. Expectations reactivate. And you step back into character. Yes, character. Because much of what you call yourself is performance stabilized over time. You learned which version of you was rewarded, and you repeated it again and again until repetition became identity. The quiet one, the strong one, the funny one, the responsible one, the agreeable one. Labels are efficient. They reduce complexity, but they also reduce possibility. When you are labeled early, you start protecting the label, even if it suffocates you. Because losing the label feels like losing belonging, and belonging feels like survival. That is the invisible contract. Trade authenticity for acceptance. You were never lost. You were navigating a system that rewarded predictability, and predictability is profitable for institutions, for culture, for tradition. An unpredictable mind questions rules. An aware mind tests assumptions. A conscious mind disrupts patterns. So the system does not crush you. It conditions you. Subtly. Repeatedly. Gently. Be realistic. Think about stability. Don't risk too much. Stay where you're valued. Advice that sounds protective, but quietly limits expansion. And here is the difficult part. The people who conditioned you often loved you, They pass down fear they never examined, limitations they never questioned, beliefs they inherited themselves. Programming is generational. It survives because it feels responsible. But responsibility without awareness becomes repetition. At some point in your life, you felt it. That quiet internal resistance. That sense that something was not fully yours. Not rebellion. Not anger. Just restlessness. Restlessness is awareness waking up. It is the friction between who you are and who you were shaped to be. Most people silence it. They call it immaturity, or instability, or selfishness. But what if restlessness is not dysfunction? What if it is data? Data that something inside you is ready to update. Updating identity feels dangerous because stability depends on predictability, and predictability depends on repetition. To update yourself, you must temporarily destabilize. And the system does not like destabilized individuals because they ask questions. They change direction. They stop performing, which leads to the real question. If you removed every expectation placed on you, who would you become? Not who you think you are. Not who others expect. Not who feels safest. Who are you? Without the script? Most people never ask that question, because the moment you do, you feel unstable. The script has been running for years. It feels automatic, natural, comfortable. To question it feels like questioning gravity, like stepping onto ground that might disappear. But instability is not collapse. It is transition. And transition feels like chaos before clarity. Start simple. Notice your reactions. Not your thoughts. Your reactions. When someone criticizes you, what rises first? Defense? Shame? Withdrawal? Those reactions were practiced, reinforced, rewarded or punished into place. Your nervous system remembers every environment you adapted to, every room where you learned what was safe. Programming is not just mental, it is physiological. Your body learned the rules. That is why change feels threatening, even when it is good. Your body equates unfamiliar with unsafe. So when you try to become different, anxiety rises. Not because it is wrong, but because it is new. The system inside you whispers, return to what works. Return to what is predictable. Return to what is approved. And most people do. They retreat. They shrink. They restabilize. But if you stay with the discomfort, without reacting, something interesting happens. You begin to see the pattern, not as identity, but as conditioning. There is power in naming it. This is not me. This is adaptation. The moment you separate awareness from reaction, the script slows down. It does not disappear, but it loses authority. You start noticing how often you say, I can't, I shouldn't. That's not realistic. And you ask, who installed that boundary? Who benefits from that belief? Not in a rebellious way, in an investigative way. Curiosity over condemnation. Because anger keeps you reacting. Curiosity keeps you observing. And observation is where deprogramming begins. You realize something unsettling. Much of your preference was protection. You did not avoid risks because you lacked ambition. You avoided them because risk once led to pain. You did not stay small because you were incapable. You stayed small because expansion once cost you connection. Programming is intelligent. It is survival logic frozen in time. But survival logic that never updates becomes limitation. You are not broken. You are running old code. And old code works until the environment changes. The life you want now may require behaviors you once avoided. Speaking up, setting boundaries, taking risks, being seen. Each of those threatens the old system. Because the old system was built for survival, not expansion. Expansion requires visibility, and visibility was not always safe. So your nervous system hesitates. It slows you down. It floods you with doubt. Not to sabotage you, to protect you. The problem is not protection. The problem is outdated protection. Imagine still wearing armor in a room where no one is attacking. Heavy, restrictive, unnecessary. And yet, it once saved you. You were never confused about who you were. You were interrupted every time you felt something deeply, and someone told you to calm down. Every time you asked a question, and someone told you to stop overthinking. Every time you showed excitement, and someone told you to be realistic. You learned something very dangerous. That your natural state was wrong. So you adjust. Not because you were weak, because you wanted to survive. And survival always wins. Think about this carefully. Children do not question themselves. They express. They feel. They imagine. They create. Self-doubt is not natural. It is taught. Slowly. Repeatedly. Quietly. It is installed through tone, through reactions, through disappointment on someone's face. And once installed, it runs automatically. Like background software. That voice in your head that says, "Do not try. You are not ready. What if you fail?" That voice is not you. It is a recording. It is a collection of past reactions, past corrections, past embarrassments. You internalize the environment. You turn external pressure into internal control. That is how programming works. It makes you police yourself. The most effective control is the kind that feels like your own thought. Because then you defend it. You justify it. You protect it. Even when it limits you. Even when it keeps you small. You say, "This is just who I am." But what if it is not? What if that is just the script you memorized? Look at your fears. Where did they begin? Were you born afraid to speak? Afraid to take risks? Afraid to be seen? Or did something happen? A laugh. A rejection. A punishment. A comparison. Moments stack. Patterns form. Identity hardens. And the world rewards predictability. It rewards compliance. It rewards people who do not question too much. So you learn to smooth your edges, to shrink your intensity, to adjust your tone, to make yourself acceptable. And slowly, you disappeared inside your own life. Here is the truth no one told you. You were not lost. You were layered. Layered with expectations. Layered with fear. Layered with beliefs that were never yours. But layers can be removed. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Slowly. Consciously. One reaction at a time. Deprogramming does not start with motivation. It starts with awareness. The next time that voice speaks, do not fight it. Pause. Listen. Ask one question. Who taught me this? Not, why am I like this? Not, what is wrong with me? Who installed this belief? Because beliefs always have a source. When you trace a fear back to its origin, something powerful happens. It stops feeling like destiny. It starts feeling like influence. And influence can be replaced. Most people try to build confidence on top of insecurity. That never works. You do not build over corrupted code. You rewrite it. Here is how rewriting begins. When fear says, "Do not speak," you speak, even if your voice shakes. When doubt says, "Wait until you are ready," you move, even if you feel unprepared. Not because you are fearless, but because you are choosing differently. And every different choice weakens the old program. The first time you override the script, it feels uncomfortable. The second time, it feels intentional. The third time, it feels powerful. And eventually, it feels natural. That is how identity shifts. Not through one breakthrough moment, through repetition, through quiet rebellion against your own conditioning. You do not need to become someone new. You need to remove what was added. Your curiosity is still there. Your boldness is still there. Your creativity is still there. It has been buried, not destroyed. And buried things can be uncovered. This is where most people stop. Because awareness hurts. Seeing the program hurts. Realizing how long you have limited yourself hurts. But pain is proof of awakening. It means you are no longer asleep inside the script. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is the moment everything changes. Not because the world shifts. Because you do. The program only works as long as it runs unnoticed. The moment you see it, you create distance from it. And distance creates power. You are no longer the voice. You are the observer of the voice. That changes everything. Control was never about chains. It was about repetition. Repeat a message long enough, and it becomes identity. Repeat a limitation long enough, and it becomes personality. But repetition works both ways. You can install something new, deliberately, intentionally, consciously. Start small. Question one belief a day. Interrupt one negative loop. Choose one uncomfortable action. That is how rewiring happens. Not through motivation, through micro decisions, tiny acts of defiance against the old script. One day you will notice something strange. The voice that used to stop you will sound weaker. The hesitation that used to freeze you will feel shorter. The fear that used to control you will feel negotiable. That is not confidence. That is reclamation. You are taking your operating system back. Understand this clearly. You were never broken. You were trained. You were never incapable. You were conditioned. You were never lost. You were navigating with someone else's map. And now, you are drawing your own. They installed fear. You install courage. They installed doubt. You install clarity. They installed limits. You remove them. This is not rebellion against the world. It is alignment with yourself. And once you remember who you were before the program, no one can reinstall it.